Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Tahona Society. Today, we are looking at designing a sustainable business. I am Jen Oakley. I am the Agave Ambassador at Pernod Ricard. Joining me today, we have an incredible lineup. We've got Amie Ward, founder of the Health Tender and Executive Director at Safe Bars. We have Alex Jump, Director of Operations at Focus on Health. And we have Shannon Michelle, founder of Brass Ring Cocktails and is in charge of social media and events production at Focus on Health. Just a quick overview. This session is part of Portland Cocktail Week's intensive cohort designed to equip students with the tools to get their ethical businesses off the ground. 50 bar professionals were selected for the cohort, where they'll join us for public classes like this one and private classes led by the brightest minds in the sustainability and entrepreneurship space from the hospitality industry for 5 weeks. All of these classes are leading up to the Altos Tahona Society 2025 Global Competition in September, where the U.S. finalists will have a shot at winning a $50,000 grant. Today, Amie, Alex, and Shannon will explore ways we can foster well-being for ourselves and our teams in demanding and stressful environments. Before we get into that, there are a few things we ask fans of this content to do. Please like us on Facebook, subscribe to our channel on YouTube, give us a follow on Instagram, and please comment below and ask questions, especially if you're one of our 50 cohort students. As a reminder, your comments and your questions are how we know to mark you as present. Head over to tahonasociety.com to sign up for the brand new Tahona Society app. You'll find expert talks, networking spaces, and other sustainability resources there. Do you know what else is on the app? The Tahona Society competition submission form. So go download the app ASAP. Now I'm going to pass it off to Alex to get us started.
Thank you, Jen. Brittany, I am ready for our slides when you can pop them up. Thank you very much. All right, so we are going to get started. This presentation is called Industry Wellbeing and Sustainability, and we're going to cover a few things today. We're going to introduce ourselves a little bit more than Jen just did. We're going to do a little inventory on the industry, and then we're going to talk about how we're going to improve our working experience. And just a little heads up, there is quite a bit of content that focuses on the challenges of our industry, but I promise by the end, we'll get to the positives of the industry and ways that we can take those negatives or those challenges and turn them into a better working experience. So bear with us through some of the negative. Um, Focus on Health is a company that I co-founded with Lauren Paylor O'Brien in 2020. It was actually the result of my pitch for Bombay Sapphire's Most Imaginative Bartender competition. We are a for-profit agency and we advocate for the health and well-being of people in the hospitality sector. We do that through storytelling, education, events, and mentorship. I know a couple of people that are in this cohort are previous scholarship recipients of ours, so I'm really happy to see y'all here today. And a little bit about me. So these are 5 pictures that give you a snapshot into my life. I'm going to start on the left-hand side here. This is me hanging out on my motorcycle, Winona. She's a 2016 Indian Scout. And the reason that this picture is included in this deck is because it actually represents a really important part of my career journey, I would say. In 2019, when I decided to enter into MIB, one of the questions that they asked us was, what inspires you outside of the hospitality industry? And I actually had 0 answers to that question, and I almost didn't enter the competition because I felt like I couldn't answer that question. What I recognized in that problem was that I had given so much of myself to my career that I had forgotten that I was allowed to also have parts of my life that fulfilled me outside of my career. So during COVID, when I was laid off, I had a bit of free time, and I was actually, very kismet forced to find things that I liked to do outside of work. And one thing that I had always wanted to do, but I'd never taken the time to do, was learn how to ride motorcycles. So I learned how to ride motorcycles during COVID and have since gotten to, ride cross country with some friends. And I now am the co-president of an all-FIM motorcycle chapter here in Denver called the Litas. So that's something that I do to get myself outside of work. When I'm on my motorcycle, I can't look at my phone. I can't send emails. All I can do is meditate. I can maybe think about work, but I can't do it. So that is a thing that I do to not be working all of the time. Going down, we're going to go kind of down, over, and then back up. So going down is a picture of me and my husband and our two dogs, Julep and Lorenzo, when we were off-roading one day, once again, getting out in nature and just enjoying our time together, trying to spend some time not working all of the time. Moving over from that, the one with my hands on my face. This is actually a picture that a friend of mine took of me with a little quote down below. That was a photo series she did in response to Roe v. Wade being overturned. And I include this picture because a lot of the things that what's the right way to say it? A lot of the things that I spend my time talking about on social media are not bar related at all, or instead politically motivated. And I think that a lot of times in hospitality industry, we're told that we're not allowed to talk about politics. We're not supposed to talk about politics when we're at work. A lot of people who find themselves in a position of influence on social media feel like they can't talk about politics because they'll lose work. And I just think that's bullshit. And I think that we should talk about politics and what's important to us. And so that's why I include that picture in this slide. Going up from there, this is me and LP. LP literally forced me to start Focus on Health as a real company in 2020. And I'm grateful for her for that, because without her doing that, I don't think I would be sitting here right now talking to all of y'all. And now my work, is very much related to looking at the hospitality industry from a slightly outsider's perspective, and trying to find ways to ensure that people that want to stay in the industry can. And then moving just one over, that is me and Jeffrey Morgenthaler holding hands when I did the Heaven Hill Bartender of the Year competition way back in like 2018. Competitions were a very big part of my life when I was active bartender, and I think that they're incredible, and it's really cool to see the growth of what a competition could be, from this competition where it was all about making drinks to the competition that y'all are hoping to participate in now, which is not about drinks at all. So that is me in 5 pictures. I'm going to hand it over to Shan. Shan, you're muted.
Oh, crud. Okay, sorry, I'm unmuted now. Sorry, just got back from a long stint of trips and not completely internet savvy again, but I'll get there, I promise. So it was really hard for me to choose photos because I feel like I do so much, and a lot of my life does really pertain to work. So I kind of like really leaned into the tiny little idiosyncrasies behind these photos. This first big photo is me in my favorite spot, which is behind a bunch of desserts. And this also is kind of a layered photo for me as well. I was out celebrating my 2000th day of sobriety in this photo, which is something that I am just very, very proud of as somebody who works in the spirits industry and somebody who continues to stay in the spirits industry, goes to a lot of events and conventions and speaks about it pretty fluidly. Also in 2024, I realized how much food and beverage is a connector, and tried to weave that into my own story, even more so than it already was. I started a large group here in Jacksonville, Florida, where I live, called Girl Dinner. And once a month, I hosted a bunch of girls from all different types of careers over at my home, and we all shared meals that were really important to us based on a theme, and something that I was really proud of, and something that I got to experience a lot of different types of walks of life, and got to meet a lot of different people that I wouldn't necessarily would have met just like staying in food and bev. Down on the bottom left is, I'm sure you might notice some of these people in this photo. This is me at Camp Run Amok. Camp Run Amok is a huge part of my life. I wouldn't be or have a lot of the experiences that I have today without it. And this group particularly, this is the news. This is a program that was created to bring that like certain part of like camp magic into camp. We make a lot of jokes all week long. We also create videos, shorts, and we turn it around on a dime Something that I wanted to do when I was growing up was I had a dream of moving to LA to become a comedy writer. And it's something that I can feed into my soul with this like small opportunity, because I don't want to live in LA, unfortunately. I like where I live, but I do like to experience that type of entertainment, and I like to make people laugh. So that's a big part of my life. On the right here, next to that is me at Portland Cocktail Week, where I get to host people coming in for mentorship opportunities. Career counseling is something that is so special to me, and I love being able to connect people to other industry giants, so that they can have those conversations and bridge those gaps in their own careers. I've also taken on becoming a mentor myself, which is something that, 5 years ago, I never thought that I would be able to say, but being able to share the things that I've learned and being an open book to those who are just looking for some sort of navigation in this world is something that I take to heart. And I love every moment of doing that. Just above that is me and my dog. This is my dog, Drake. He is going to be 9 this year. And he is my constant every day. I got Drake when I was in my 20s, when I was in a space where I probably really shouldn't have gotten a dog, but having a dog forced me to have a routine. He's the reason why I wake up every day, not in a like sentimental sense, but also in a very literal sense. He gives me a sense of purpose, and he also makes me laugh pretty regularly. So having him in my life has changed it so much for the better. And I do believe that like pets make your life that much sweeter. And then next to that is me with my phone, which is where you'll regularly find me, is behind my phone. Not just for work, but I use social media and my platform as kind of like a journal. That's how I can become vulnerable with people. That's how I connect with a lot of people, on my sobriety journey, on my beverage industry journey, on everything. I truly believe that if I show every part of myself and it connects with somebody, that that can make a difference. And I never shy away from telling people exactly how I'm feeling, or if I'm stressed out or have anxieties, because I think that more people should talk about those things, especially in our industry. And that's kind of where that got me here today.
All right. Let her rip then. Hi, y'all. I'm Amie Ward. I use they and she pronouns. I'm going to talk a little bit about Safe Bars before I go into the other parts of who I am. But one of the big parts of who I am is Safe Bars. I'm the executive director for Safe Bars and have been since 2022. But I started training with Safe Bars in 2018. Safe Bars is a nonprofit that is, it started in 2013 by Lauren Taylor, not to be confused with Lauren Paler, even though Lauren Paler was one of our trainers in Safe Bars for a couple of years as well. But we have one big mission, and that is to end sexual aggression and other forms of gender-based violence in bars and restaurants. It's written there on the little descriptor there too. It's such a powerful, really important group. We work really hard to go and train the staff of literally any type of space, whether it's a bar, restaurant, venue, Camp Run Amok, Portland Cocktail Week, Focus on Health Scholars. Like, we are committed towards training the staff that work in our beloved hospitality industry and giving them the tools to be able to recognize when problematic behaviors are happening, and then provide them with the skills so they can safely intervene and safely de-escalate and keep themselves and their guests safe. And also, like, our big goal at the end of the day is to really change the landscape of hospitality. We're going to be talking about a lot of different things in hospitality that we love and risks that we're fully aware of. One of them is that harassment can happen in our spaces. We are one of the most heavily aggressed upon populations next to sex workers, and it's a real thing. And I will spend plenty of time talking about that some other time, but right now, like, we'll weave it into here. But it's really important that you all have these resources and skills to be able to keep yourself safe and change the landscape of the industry that we know and love. And we'll talk about that throughout this presentation. So there's the rest of me. I love looking at everybody else's pictures so I can figure out what to do for my own. And I feel like I might have gotten the homework assignment correct. So that big picture, which was a really hard one to find of like something long like that, magically worked out and is also at Camp Run Amok. My background is actually in exercise physiology. I have multiple degrees in exercise physiology, which makes me kind of a glorified PE teacher, if you will. But I love the body and I love movement and I love making sure that bodies feel good at all times. So with that background, I still chose to go into bartending because I like talking to strangers for a living. It's like my favorite thing to do. But as part of being in the industry and wanting to tie my background of loving the body together, I started a business called The Health Tender back in 2015. And I work with, again, our beloved population, all of us here in the hospitality community, to provide people with like access to physical, mental, and emotional health resources so they can stay in this industry for as long as humanly possible, because I think it is so important. So I've been able to go to Camp Run Amok and teach workout classes to people. They are labeled as movement classes because I find that that's a barrier that gets removed by taking out exercise and talking about movement, just being able to enjoy being in our bodies. In addition to being at Camp Run Amok as the health tender, my primary job there is the beverage director. So I've been the beverage director for camp since 2018. I had my first session in 2016. And one of my most favorite things in the world is going to camp and being able to provide the drinks that are both NA and full strength, and lots of NA ones now, more that we are able to like keep that going. And we have more people behind us like on the NA train too, which is really nice. But we provide all the drinks for every single activation that happens when people are actually on camp. And I love being able to teach people how to batch large scale events and really enjoy that portion of things. My favorite place is behind the scenes, shockingly, for as loudly colored hair and loud that I am in general. It is more my happy place of being able to execute events than anything else. And so teaching people how to do that is really cool. I'll like go right into the top right-hand corner then as well, because I love the mentorship program that Shannon has helped cultivate. That is one of my favorite things, is being able to mentor people. And like, that's a picture of Thomas, who, because of our conversation at PDX, I was like, you need to be on the Bev team. Absolutely. This has to happen. It's like being able to teach people like that how to, make these large scale events happen and really enjoy that side of things. Going in the opposite direction of what everybody else did. But top left-hand corner is going to be me pulling a tractor. My happy place outside of being in the bar industry and doing safe bars is I lift heavy things. I lift cars and pull trucks for fun. That makes me very happy. And that was me trying to lift a tractor as many times as I could in 90 seconds last year for
How many times was it?
It was 13 for me. And then it was also a partner event, because the event is called the Catalina Strong Mixer. And so in the last couple of seconds when I had to pop out, my partner came in there and came in with another, I think like 12 reps. So it was like very fun, very nice. And then bottom left-hand corner is another large scale event. This one was for Portland Cocktail Week, actually. So this is when we were on a boat. We were on the Canadian cruise, and we were pouring out lots and lots of drinks there. So that was very fun. And everybody had their animal pictures. Bottom right-hand corner. If anybody ever hears me talking about the nude dudes, those are my cats. So we have Nosferatu and Alexander Ovechkin. I have two Sphinx cats who are my pride and joy. I also love puns. And they literally keep me alive every single day in the same capacity. I got Nosferatu's nickname is Toots, but I got Toots in the middle of the pandemic, where I was like probably at my lowest mental state ever. And that cat literally saved my life. I've never experienced unbridled joy and love and affection for anything before I had my cats. I'm also deathly allergic to everything, which is why I have the no hair cats, and there's no dander and things like that. So if you want your little TMI there, but they are awesome. They chirp, they talk. The nude dudes, they'll probably crawl on screen at some point in time. So, but that's a little bit of who I am, and yeah, pumped to keep it going.
All right, so we're gonna kick it off and we're going to do an inventory of the industry. So we're going to talk a little bit about the things that make the industry really great. First one we have is it's a really creative field, right? Not like we get to write cocktails, we also just get to work with our hands, which is rare in a lot of fields. I remember I heard one time that um like a lot of Tauruses end up becoming chefs because it's like a creative sign. And I mean, every time when I meet somebody and they're a Taurus and they work in the kitchen, I'm like, of course you do. But it's true. Like it's a very, very creative industry. We get to be creative in a variety of different ways, and we often work with our hands. One that, probably gets us in the industry first and maybe keeps us in for a long time is that it is really flexible schedule. We have unique working hours, and a lot of us probably like those hours, regardless of what your job is, right? If you're a bartender, you have such a wide option of kinds of bartending jobs that you can get. You can literally find the one that fits the schedule you prefer. You could be a fine dining bartender and you could be home before midnight every night if that's what you prefer. You could be a cocktail bar bartender and you may not get home until 4 in the morning, but you are a night owl and you like being up at night. You could be a barista and you may get to work at 5 in the morning and, be done with work by 3 and then have the whole day. There's such a wide variety of working hours in the hospitality industry that also can allow us to fit in other things in our life that we may like. Um, you may be in school and go to school during the day and work at night. And that is like the way that you're able to achieve that. I think that that's probably how a lot of people find themselves in our industry as well. Pros and cons to that, but in general, like I find that to be a pro. Shannon, I'll toss it over to you for the next one. You're muted again.
On mute again. Sorry, if my dog hears me talking, he'll come over here and start like chomping. So I try to help as much as I can with his anxieties. So this third one here is opportunities to travel, learn about different cuisines and cultures, which is definitely something that has not only led me to the service industry, but kept me in the service industry through different avenues that we can do as well. Like there are so many chances to go to a different city, whether it be like New Orleans for Tails or going to Portland for Cocktail Week or Seattle or whatever it is. All of those things are around hospitality, and you get to go and visit these new sites. I get a lot of my inspiration for new cocktails or new concepts from being able to go and being exposed to different cultures in different cities. I think it's a great way to open up our minds and open up that creative bank, and just really kind of like digging our heels into why this industry is so great, which is the level of diversity that we get to experience because of it.
I just can't get to my mute button fast enough. However, mute challenges for the day. So the next two I'll talk about, like, being on a team is my happy place in this world. I am a jock. I come from playing sports, and I have treated every bar team that I've been on like a sports team, being able to put everybody into positions that make them shine, and really trying to lead that group to a shared goal. So I love doing that, and I find that within the bar, it's so easy to transition to that capacity. There probably will be a mention of calling people your family or bar family when we're going through this training a little bit later. But I think calling people a team and being able to recognize everybody's like individual roles and how important those are so good. Also, the instant gratification of a job well done, like being able to see people happy with what you've presented or created for them is such a thrill. I think people who really, truly love being in this industry love being in service to others. That can look at a lot of different ways, but I love watching an activation go off without a hitch. I love people enjoying their drinks. I love watching what people experience from what we have been able to create for them. And I think that's so beautiful. And I think people probably feel that in their gut, like hearing that said out loud, that probably strikes a chord with them. Also, I am an odd HD kid, very neurospicy, and hospitality is the place for me and others like that in here. You can look the way you want to look, be who you are, and truly have the safety of doing that in the hospitality environment. And I think that is so incredibly special. I ran away from the very conservative exercise space and health and wellness space because even in that and many years ago when I was still in there, was told I needed to not have weird hair colors, take the piercings out of my face, and I needed to take off, cover up my tattoos, or else people are going to look at me strange or feel weird about it. And that is just I feel like it's the base norm when you go into our environment. You really can be what you want. You can be who you are. You have the safety and space to figure out who you are in hospitality as well. And that's just a really beautiful piece of it. If anybody else, what else makes this so special for you all? Why are you in hospitality? What called you to it? Why does this stand out? And why would you never leave, or they're going to have to pry the shaker from your cold, dead hand? We're definitely curious to see what inspires
Yeah, if
everybody.
anybody has anything, we'd love for you to throw it in the chat really quick so we can call out a few others. If there's anything y'all thought we missed or anything you'd like to add, we're going to give it just a couple of minutes for people to tippy type away. We'll play a little elevator music while we wait. All right. Jasmine says everyone has a different style to their hospitality, so they're constantly learning new ways of service. Yeah, absolutely.
Jasmine also was on the beverage team last year, crushed it, amazing, shocking, I know.
Andrea says it's the community making connections. I've always said that about the hospitality industry. My parents are the most annoying bar guests that you're ever going to have because they'll sit at your bar and they'll have to find a way to mention that I also work in the industry. But it's not really annoying. It's very, very sweet and cute. And I've also gotten to send them, across the country and across the world, and they've gotten to sit at my friends' bars. So my own family has been introduced to my community, which is really cool. Derry says
that I get to be a nerd.
Yes, being a nerd is so cool. There was one. Derry said, just getting to be in this class and learning new things. Absolutely. Science of cocktails. Opportunities to learn. Lots of learning. That's a big theme. I personally felt that, when, especially in my first 10 years of my career, I kind of felt like there was still things to learn, there's always a new way to learn something. Making people feel seen and cared for. Okay, awesome. Great. Thank you all so much for throwing these in. Please feel free to keep typing. We're gonna scoot along so we don't keep people here too long. But all of these are really speaking to this, sense of community that I think, for a lot of us, that is what has kept us here, right? We've found a community. Like Amie said, we found a lot of like-minded people in this industry. All right. All right, so industry challenges, we're going to cover these in 3 topics. We're going to talk about high pressure working environments. We're going to talk about the industry hazards and pitfalls, and then we're going to talk about community and workplace culture. And these are 3 topics of things that present challenges in our industry and make it, hard to thrive at times. So I'm going to kick it off by talking about high pressure working environments. We work in fast moving spaces, bars, restaurants, hotels, strip clubs, wherever you work, that have a lot of stressors and really high risk tools. And I always say that in some ways that it is a little silly, right? Because when you're in service, when you're in the weeds, when you're in service, you're 15 tickets deep. for some reason, like physically and emotionally and mentally, like that is just as stressful as like somebody performing open heart surgery. But we're just putting liquid in cups, we're just like serving drinks. But that's not to like take away from the fact that it is actually very physically stressful for us and can create sometimes very unsafe working conditions. I always make the joke of the coworker that didn't kick the ice underneath the ice machine. I personally have the ankles of Bambi, and so that ice is a very dangerous workplace condition for me. But we work with a lot of dangerous tools. We work with knives, fire, Y peelers, all of these things, speed pours, all of these things that are very dangerous and can create a lot of stress for ourselves as well. We, especially in front of house, our work is associated with both emotional and affective labor. So emotional labor is the act of changing our emotions to basically elicit a response from other people, or just like changing our emotions in general to accomplish our work. Effective labor is trying to elicit an emotion from somebody else. So effective labor is, we serve somebody a food and the response we're trying to get from them is they are happy. This is also part of the positive thing that we said, right? We get to have that instant gratification of a job well done. But that can also be very stressful when the job is not well done, right? Or somebody like is upset and doesn't like the service that they've been provided. They don't like the food or drink. And it, for some reason, is like a big, like a big deal, instead of it just being like, oh, let me just comp that for you or take it away, get you something different. Like there can be a lot of effective labor that goes into feeling like somebody was unhappy with that service. And then, emotional labor, having to maybe, if we're having a bad day, having to pretend like that's not the case, right? Kind of putting our emotions to the side, sacrificing our own needs to take care of the needs of other people. We always say at Focus on Health, hospitality starts with taking care of yourself. But that is, often not taught in bars and restaurants. It's the whole trope of leave it at the door, where we're not allowed to be people with our own emotions. I had to work a guest shift on the day of the election. And it was, like every single person was like, how are you? And I was like, terrible. I'm so bad. But, like, here we are. Would you like a cocktail? But that's not always what people want to hear when they're coming to get a drink from you. And then our roles face many demands. We face demands from a lot of different places too. So both our customers, our managers, and our coworkers. And this taps into this concept of like, high demands aren't necessarily a bad thing, so long as we have all of the resources we need to cope with those demands. Then we may perform really well, even though the demands are high. But if we don't have a lot of those resources, that's when high demands can result in incredibly stressful workplace environments. So like, I always bring up the concept of just like, if you've ever worked a service where you just like don't have enough old-fashioned glasses, and like in order to strain this old-fashioned, somebody needs to go get an empty from a table. You have to like wash it, and then it's like hot, and you're having to and every single shift you're like, I say we don't have enough old-fashioned glasses, and like nobody will order them for me. It's like, in theory, that shouldn't be that stressful of a situation, but it is stressful because you just don't have the resources you need to do your job well. And that we can face that a lot in our industry. And like I said, coming from a variety of different sources, from our customers, from our managers, and from our coworkers. That can also relate to like social support and emotional intelligence, right? So like, are you on a clopin? Do you work a clopin like every weekend and you're never getting enough sleep? Are you waking up in time to eat food before you come to work? Are you being served family meal? Are there enough staff working? I think a lot of us worked during COVID, where it was like people were always out sick. There was almost nothing to be done about it, right? But the demands were so high and the resources were so few, that we were seeing a lot of negative results from that.
Yeah. Industry hazards and pitfalls. Something I talk about a lot when I'm doing health tender discussions is the physical physical things that we're looking at for potential pitfalls and risks while we're there. We are doing physically strenuous work. We are also doing the work of an endurance athlete, yet not treating ourselves or being treated like that in any capacity. So there's always the risk for slips, trips, and falls for just being in the nature of what we do. But then there's a lot of other things that come along with that too. So, in the first bracket, we're talking about the lack of investment in leadership skills. So some people, I know that everybody that is listening to this right now has been in a position where they might have gotten thrust into a position of leadership before they were ready, or been had a leader that was put into that position too. Obviously, there's a lot of turnover in our spaces. So sometimes people are put in that position when they're not quite ready. And then there's not the investment into their own skills to make them a good leader and be able to help them facilitate a good experience for their staff, a safe experience for their staff. And we're also looking at owners and operators who either do not or cannot provide additional training for their staff in terms of education, in terms of bystander intervention training, like what we do with safe bars, or de-escalation training, which is really imperative given that we are constantly working with people coming from every walk of life, because we are the third space. A bar, a restaurant is the third space where it's not work, it's not home, it's this other space where people come to celebrate, commiserate, be sad, be happy, everything that you can possibly think of. And you need to be attuned to every single person that's coming in here. And we're not prepared for all of those interactions. We don't have leaders that show us the right way. We don't have leaders that are able to train us on how to have the skills to be able to intervene and de-escalate in those safe ways. There might be, there's the risk for harassment that happens in those spaces, which is really unfortunate and really too common. And then there's the general lack of education for our staff beyond like spirits training. But with that lack of anything for spirits training or leadership training or anything like that, that limits the upward mobility that we can provide to them. When we're looking at the workplace safety, there's a disregard for basic safety and OSHA compliance. Everybody has been in one of those bars that is beaten beyond repair and still trucking along, or you have 3 people working out of one well, which is really difficult yet able to be done, but we shouldn't have to do that necessarily. And the one of the biggest things that like destroys everybody in this room's heart is that there is the lack of basic benefits for people, lack of basic like care for the people that are working in this very strenuous environment, not being able to get back what they put out, because there is no PTO, there's no sick leave, there's no general access to healthcare unless you are in a union space or in a hotel space. It's a very rarity that you're going to find that you always are given access to healthcare, being able to get health insurance or anything like that. And it's way too expensive for most of us to afford on your own when you're doing it through a marketplace, which is really just so sad, because we are the people who care for others and we're unable to care for ourselves. And then the last bit, we're talking about the lack of autonomy, lack of being able to have a say in something, being able to have our voices heard. There's a lot of inequitable practices in terms of, because where is like HR in most of our bars and restaurants, right? It really relies on a leader or owner to have those pieces in place for us already. But those inequitable practice leads to mistreatment of staff, treating staff as disposable. So when they do bring up a concern or something that could make something better for the environment as a whole, there are some people who still think that they can just get rid of staff like that because they're causing a disruption rather than actually listening to the good contributions that they're actually making at that point in time and things that could help make a positive change. And when I say over-reliance on the status quo, that saying of that's just the way the industry is really destroys my brain anytime I hear it. Like, you don't have to work 7 days a week. You don't have to have different schedules every single week. You could have the same couple of same shifts every single week on repeat. If leaders and people who are in those positions to make that happen, listen and can be in tune with their staff. Or saying that, we can't do healthcare because of XYZ. There's other ways in which we can provide benefits for our staff that don't have to rely on, we're all kind of screwed by the man, but there's other ways that you can provide for your staff that people are just not willing to look at, or saying it's not possible. And that's really silly. Saying that, this is going to be addressed as well, but like having to work marathon shifts, not having breaks, relying on drinking and shots behind the bar. Like, it's not just the way that the industry is. That's bullshit. Like, you actually can change things. It's just that there's been an over-reliance on status quo for so long, and it requires way more of us shouting from the rooftop that this is a potential that we can get to. And all of us are working on that. Everybody in this room is working very hard to provide those resources and access to making that change. But there's good stuff too, we promise.
It's almost like the lack of investment in leadership skills is resulting in the inequitable practices.
Weird.
All right, so I'm going to be chatting a little bit about community and workplace culture, which consequently is the thing that everybody seems to enjoy the most out of being in the industry. So when we take a look at our community, we need to look at it in two different ways. What are we doing to provide for our community, and how can we make it better? And also, how can we recognize the negative aspects of maybe people abusing that community space, because that does happen. This first guy here is that it becomes acceptable and commonplace to consume alcohol at work and overconsume after your shift or on your day off. Drinking is often considered a benefit of the job. A lot of times people will stay at jobs because they know that they can drink at work, or they're able to take a shot with their friends or their coworkers during the middle of a shift. So many times, more often than not, you get through a rush and somebody will go, wow, that was really had that stuck in my head when I got my first big bartending job. I was like, this is so cool. Like, we are able to connect in this way. Like, I can't believe that we're actually allowed to do this. And I was like, this brings us closer with our guests and brings us closer with our teammates, when all actuality, it is pretty dangerous and can become a slippery slope. And a lot of the times, the expectation of shift drinks become compensation for you working an extra hour of your time, losing an hour of your actual personal time. And it usually is used as a reward. I call it bartender's Pavlov's bell at some point, everybody gets a little, you hear the bell ring and everybody runs to the corner to do a safety meeting. And you're starting to see it less and less now, because people are being a little bit more mindful of those opportunities, but it doesn't mean that it doesn't still happen, and it still affects people in a negative way. It also affects the outlook from the guest perspective. It makes them feel like maybe you're not taking your job as seriously. It also, it just is not a great look altogether, I think, from both sides of the bar. This second one is it kind of ties into that a little bit. I think with bar and restaurants, they champion overworking and a lack of boundaries. Hustle culture is something that was so big when I started bartending. Everybody was like, you got to grind, you've got to get at it. If you're not working 60 hours a week, what are you doing? It felt very just aggressive on the fact that we had to bend ourselves over backwards to gain recognition in small spaces, especially if you're from a tertiary market or a smaller place, like us, where it's I really have to work extra hard, especially being a woman. I'm sure a lot of women can relate to this as well. You're working 3 times as much to just get a little bit of recognition. And it also stems, I think, from FOMO, fear of missing out on opportunities. If you're not at the bar, you might not see people that you're supposed to be seeing. You might not get the interview of somebody else who might be sitting at the bar, who could potentially be your employer. If you're not showing up at the bar after your shift, maybe you're missing out on opportunities there. There's just a lot of these little social, I don't want to call them aggressions, but just social interactions that can only live in your head. They're not real. I think as somebody who has kind of stepped out of that plate, those things are actually, they don't they don't affect you in a negative way if you don't go out to the bar after work. You can still have those same community structure without having to stretch yourself so thin. There's also a big like leave it at the door mentality, being forced to be the best version of yourself or whatever your employer thinks is the best version of yourself. So having to stuff down emotions as soon as you walk through the door. I mean, yes, there is maybe some room there. Like I definitely don't want to be crying on behind the bar during my shift, but I always try to leave space for people who are not feeling it, or make sure that I know on a manager level, like if you're not into this today, like please let me know so I can give you time to be by yourself, to get yourself together, to go to the walk-in and scream or punch a fruit box, whatever it is that you might need to take that little bit of time for your mental health and clarity. And then this third one is expectation of free labor at events in exchange for exposure or status, which is a thing that a lot of people can get roped into when they're new in the industry. It's very flattering to be chosen for different opportunities. And there are people out there, there are brands out there who will absolutely push it when it comes to payment or non-payment. They will give you a spot on the Instagram feed. They'll give you, a little quote, which is very cool. I'm not saying that it's not cool, but I am saying that there is a line that needs to be drawn in order for us to all progress as a community together. When you are undercharging or underselling yourself, you're also underselling your community. You're not allowing the people around you to be able to charge what they're worth if you're not charging what you're worth. So a rising tide sails all ships, essentially with that one. We need to make sure that we're making the space better for us so it can be better for the community as a whole. Because when we're all charging what we're worth in this capacity, then everybody succeeds.
We did have one question that it feels relevant to respond to now rather than at the end so that we don't forget what the question was about. It was just about drinking at work and drinking after work with your employees. How do we train managers and owners to think about that? I do think that is part of a really large cultural change that has to happen in our industry. And it starts, it can start with employees and line employees, simply like saying no thank you to drinking like a shift drink or taking a shot behind the bar. As a manager myself, like I eventually realized in my career that drinking during work, like during service, wasn't serving my ultimate career goals. So I stopped doing that. There are some restaurants in Denver that I know of that have stopped offering shift drinks to their staff. And the way that they proposed it to their staff was, we did the math in the year. This is how much we spend, or like, this is the cost of everybody having shift drinks. And like the cost of, I think they also incorporated the cost of like giving drinks out to friends and everything like that. And they're like, this is the amount of money we spend on that. Y'all can keep doing that if you prefer, or this amount of money, we can stop doing that and we'll invest it into employee benefits. So like those are really large, cultural workplace changes that can happen, but it takes people, being on board, recognizing that drinking at work isn't an actual benefit, making personal changes and talking to your coworkers, your managers, and your owners about the things that you're passionate about. So like it can be self-driven, but it could also require like larger cultural changes as well. I don't know if Shannon and Amie, y'all have anything to add there.
No, I think like that is like really just the gist of it. And I really do believe that if there are a couple of people at work, that those two people can make a big difference in the workplace culture if they really push it. Just being able to say, no, we don't drink at work anymore because we want to be the best bartenders or the best person here working at the time, and drinking gets in the way of it, can really turn people's opinion just even at a slow rate. And I currently still work in bars and restaurants, and I see a change just because my bar doesn't allow us to drink on service. If I'm not allowed to drink while I'm working, then I don't want to have a drink after work. I want to go home. like it just really changes the narrative of all things. So I think, letting your voice be heard and being able to be vocal about it is the best thing that you can do for yourself and your other teammates.
Cool.
All right. So what does this all result in? We're going to talk about, a little bit more of like the negative side of like what these things turn into. They can turn into substance use issues, mental health and physical health challenges, as well as burnout, turnover, and instability within the workplace.
All right, so we'll dive into substance use issues. For anybody who may not know, a year and a half ago, I went back to school and I'm now getting my master's in public health. Perfect time to be doing that politically. Never felt better. But one of the things that I'm studying in my master's program is substance use, and I get to be like the squeaky wheel in my cohort at school, and I'm literally always writing papers about substance use in the hospitality industry, which has been cool because I've gotten to read a lot of research about it. It also is a bit sad to realize kind of where we are at in our industry. The hospitality industry, for those who don't know, we are ranked number 1 for last month illicit drug use. Illicit drugs are just any drug that is illegal or is obtained illegally. So because marijuana is still federally illegal, that is classified under illicit drug use, as would be, opiates, ecstasy, MDMA, any like benzos, anything basically is classified as illicit drug use. So we are number 1 industry for past month illicit drug use, just meaning that did you use drugs in the last month? We are also the number 1 industry for substance use disorder. So for having a substance use disorder, and we are shockingly number 3 for past month heavy alcohol consumption. We are beat by mining and construction. Number 3, which is interesting because we do have ready access to alcohol. Alcohol and drug use, it has been shown to lead to career dissatisfaction and basically career turnover. And we're seeing that in our industry as a direct result. The hospitality industry can have anywhere from 90 to 120% turnover in a restaurant in a year. So there's high rates of turnover in our industry, and especially since COVID, we all have seen a lot of people leaving our industry. We obviously also have a very complicated and complex relationship with alcohol in our lives because it plays different roles in our lives. We work with it. We obviously sell it, which is very complicated. And we have a strong educational connection to it because, we are for a lot of us, definitely for me, I was drawn into this industry because there was this whole world of things that I didn't know about that I got to learn about. You could spend years becoming an agave, master, and then you could transition to becoming a sherry master. There's just so much fun. You can become a cicerone, you can become a sommelier. Now you can become somebody who's like certified in like terpenes and THC. Like there's just so much to learn. So obviously it is complicated because it can amplify our creativity. It can amplify some of our best relationships, but it can also amplify our worst relationships and some of the things about ourselves, our relationships, and our careers that we don't like. It is a way for us to connect with people in our lives, especially people in the beverage industry, where maybe we don't have a lot else in common with them, but we do have in common our love of booze. This can become really complicated because when we start drinking to cope or drinking as a way to connect with other people, it can become very problematic. And we may not be able to necessarily parse apart when we are drinking to cope with something or to numb our feelings or to calm our social anxiety versus when we're drinking for excitement or for education or for relaxation or something like that. The industry also has a very polarizing approach to substance use issues, and we normalize problematic issues and minimize serious issues. This is kind of like a two for one topic. Often in the industry, it's the conversation when there is maybe an issue or somebody is struggling is not always like, we're concerned because you drank X amount or you're consuming X amount, but rather we're concerned because you're drinking X amount and you're not handling it well. So like conversation isn't, it's concerning that you had 6 drinks last night. It's concerning that you didn't handle 6 drinks well last night. And there's a difference between the two. And both are like the latter is a result of the first, not the latter isn't the concern. But we often don't talk about that. There's a bit of like a double standard or a metric that we should be able to handle immense amounts of alcohol because it's the industry standard. Yeah, let's see. Anything else to add to that? I don't think so. I guess the last thing that I'll add to this is that, as I mentioned, we have a very complicated relationship with alcohol, and it is causing a lot of people to not talk about it. And something else that has been found in the research that I find very interesting is that people who are highly likely to have substance use disorder, so they are high risk for substance use disorder, are also found to be more likely to self-select themselves into the hospitality industry, basically meaning that the risk factors are often shared. So there are things like being young, living alone, maybe being neurodivergent. Some of these things are high risk for substance use disorder, having past trauma. Those things are also high risk for working in hospitality. And risk just meaning likely, like more likely, not meaning like you're in physical danger or harm.
And for the mental and physical health challenges that we're seeing, the first line I think it's a big overarching one, and it plays into everything that's below it here. So whether you were, their mental health challenges are more common than we give them credit for. It's just a matter of us not vocalizing enough, and there's still stigma around mental health, even though it's slowly dissipating, but there's not enough discussion about anxiety, depression, neurodivergent peoples and the experiences that they have that happen. But it is exacerbated when we're in hospitality spaces. The risk for, if you did not already have these things that you are working with, the risk for developing anxiety and depression is massive, being in a space where our sleeping patterns are disrupted because we're on different shifts. Our circadian rhythms and biological clocks get completely dismantled by being in shift work. And it doesn't have to be that bad, but if you are not acutely aware of it and trying to actively maintain and manage your sleep outside of your shifts, that can lead to problems with anxiety and depression. Because we are not eating behind the bar on a regular basis and do not regularly have a lot of time. There are a few states that mandate that you have breaks and you need to eat, and every other state is screwed as a result of that. So we're not eating on a regular basis. Everybody is eating over trash cans still. So there's risk for disordered eating, and that can be as much as not eating on a regular basis. So trying to make that an all-encompassing term there. There's also, everything that was just talked about with substance abuse and issues that can come up and arise with that can also contribute to anxiety and depression. Harm that's experienced via harassment and aggression. Basically, we're working in this, perfect environment that is set to continuously traumatize and re-traumatize people by what's going on there, especially when our livelihood is dependent upon tips and things like that, and just general ways in which power dynamics kind of like exist and present themselves in our environment. We experience a lot of different risks for that harm and harassment and aggression on a regular basis, and that can lead to just more of that cycle of anxiety and depression and everything else on top of that. I'll talk a little bit more about that in just a second, but because of the nature of what we do, because of those shaking, stirring, we have repetitive motion injuries that we're always at risk for. no bar is built for a bartender. Alex, I hope like hell when yours is finally built out, like I'm sure you're taking all these things into consideration. Like most of the ways that wells are designed are not designed for most humans and our average heights and everything like that. You also might have too narrow of a space for people to freely and comfortably move behind a bar. The fact that there are really cool bar designs, wells, and cockpits that are available for us to have, but they're completely inaccessible due to their price, makes it so ergonomically you are meant to just diminish behind the bar, and it really sucks. So there's debilitating repetitive motion injuries. I'm sure everybody in here has a wrist, an elbow, a shoulder, a hip, a foot, a back, something that hurts as a result of what you do behind the bar. And you can try to stay in it if you're not actively trying to maintain and manage those things, which there is a way to do that. But for some people, it ends their careers because it's just too much pain. Yeah. And then
DeQuervians, yeah.
What's that?
DeQuervians, yeah. I developed DeQuervians. Yeah.
Yep. 6, 7 in a bar is not ergonomically friendly for me. No, any of us that are above, 5'6" are not really in a good position in that, and anybody that's shorter than that is also not. And because there's also there's a minimum required distance on the bar countertop where you also then have to basically put your entire life in front of you, and you're bartending in a way that's meant to destroy your body. Not to mention, if you're in a space that has bad acoustics, you can harm your ears, you can harm your vocal cords. I tell everybody the story of I shredded my vocal cords because I was in a garage that was converted into a food hall. I shredded my vocal cords. I was no longer able to talk, and I had to get those repaired. That was horrible. Half me never wants to go back behind on a regular basis for a bar because of how painful it was to have to get a surgery to be able to talk again. And this was kind of touched on a little bit in the beginning, but the emotional labor that we put out every single day, it's one of the hidden things in there that Alex said everything. And there's this one hidden piece that is, if emotional labor, if you are doing it correctly, the person on the other side of the bar will never know how much effort you were exerting to create that experience for people. That means you are absolutely putting yourself out there more than just no matter what your bad day or your good day or anything like that is. It's like going above and beyond for people to not recognize that you're going above and beyond. Emotional labor is very debilitating and has a lot of wear and tear on your brain and your body if you're continuing to deal with that. Secondary trauma, we experience the same exact thing that a first responder or a teacher, people in positions of those caregiving positions are, because you hear things from the other side of the bar or even with your coworkers that you don't need to hear. People treat you like you're their psychologist. People tell you more things than you need to know. And even though you might not actively be paying attention to that, it is still registering in your brain, and your brain takes toll of everything that it's taking in from that, right? And the vicarious trauma is like consistent exposure to whether it's people saying things on one side of the bar. And I backtrack for the secondary trauma portion. I mean, like, people are having a fight at the bar and you're having to take that in, or they're talking about something that is not your business. Like, I hold many affairs from my bar regulars deep inside this green hair that will never go out into the world. I didn't need to have that, but I kept that secret, and that also has wear and tear on your body, right? Vicarious trauma is the constant exposure to these different things, even though you're not trying to be a part of it. It's the nature of us being in a public setting where people are here having that, and that has wear and tear on our bodies. That secondary trauma, vicarious trauma, leads to burnout. Burnout makes it almost impossible to come back from the bar or come back and like be a happy person where you're at, but we still stay in it because we don't have the space to take time and to figure out and have like a break to be able to just capture ourselves. And then that all leads to compassion fatigue. And once you're already in compassion fatigue, that's all of those things combined together, the secondary trauma, vicarious trauma, burnout, that leads to compassion fatigue, where you find no joy in anything that you do anymore, whether at work or whether at home. And there's literally no space for you to take so you can just recoup. And I'm not talking like a week. Like, compassion fatigue, once you're in there, once you realize that you're experiencing compassion fatigue, it's too late. You're far deep in there. that means like months that you need away from this space in order to be able to recapture who you are and find the joy in the things that you had on a regular basis. It's a real thing. And without those like scheduled breaks and things like, actual time off that isn't just time off to go to a conference or go to the next event or whatever it is, that just takes the biggest toll on your body. And then we're looking at PTSD. That could be from experiencing harassment and aggression, seeing stuff happening on a regular basis in your setting, whether, coworkers are fighting or guests are fighting. And it doesn't even have to be fighting. It could be arguing. It could just be like really stressful tension type thing. That PTSD is really real. And it, like, complex PTSD shows in very different ways for people. So there are a lot of these challenges. And again, we're not saying any of this stuff to scare the shit out of anybody. It is literally just trying to make you aware of it so you can do the prep work to help yourself prevent and mitigate this harm that could happen to yourself. It's very possible to mitigate the harm, but we have to be aware of all these possible things that are going on.
All right. How do I follow that up? No, I've got my favorite slide, mostly because I feel like these terms are so much more commonly used now than they ever were before, with burnout, turnover, and instability, which are all key things. If you've ever worked in a workplace that was just kind of like haphazardly put together, you notice these things happening at a higher rate. So this first guy with warp systems to develop a sense of belonging, that always comes down from the top. Alex mentioned it earlier when we talked about, Alex and Amie both talked about it a little bit when we talked about people coming into management roles that have no idea what they're doing. Present company included. I was a bar manager at 24. And beverage director at 26, which may not seem like really young, but in the grand scheme of things, I'll be 34 this month, and like I'm still figuring things out. When you give the keys to somebody that young, the only reference point that they have to go off is how they were treated by somebody else. And a lot of the times, especially for us millennials, we got treated pretty poorly by the generation before ours. And when we experience emotional trauma, we're more likely to traumatize others, which is where that all comes from. Hurt people hurt people. It pushes a repetitive emotional trauma of like pushing down your own emotions, leaving your emotions at the door. When we work burnout into this, burnout has to do with how we feel about our own value within our community, as well as a fair exchange for what we're putting out. Another vehicle of value is compensation, or our personhood is being respected. So we look towards these bigger figures. I don't want to call them elders because sometimes they're not much older than you. People who have passed these keys of like, well, if I'm shouting, then I am being, I'm being direct. Or if exactly. It's just like, that's not how we go about things anymore. You see, people like Gordon Ramsay or John Taffer on TV who are, they're not explaining things in a way that we can have a conversation together. They are shouting and often barking orders at people in a way to show they're higher up and they're at a greater scale than you, which is just not necessarily how we need to be talking to our staff or our teammates. And because of that, we see a lot of people leave the industry. I think this also, comes from the other side of the bar. I think a lot of us during the pandemic and working through the pandemic, we were mistreated by a lot of people, not just from our own employers, but from people on the other side of the bar, because we were their first point of contact when it came to talking about the new rules that were being implemented. I live in Florida. It's pretty lawless here. We were closed for 7 weeks. I went back to the bar as a bar manager and had to enforce a bunch of rules on adults who thought that I was open for them. And we were. Being an essential business, we were open. But there was nobody coming by to make sure that our safety was in mind. There was nobody coming by making sure that the guest safety was kept in mind. So we had to enforce all of these different values and rules that people aren't necessarily used to because they they hold on to that, what is it? The customer's always right. And it's not necessarily true. A lot of people miss the last half of that quote, which is in matters of taste, which just means that, like, I'll give you the drink that you want or the food that you want to your liking. It doesn't mean that I will bend to your whim because you've got $2 on a tip line for me. And I think that when you have all these high demands, but you don't have the resources or the support, you feel like you're overworked and you're underlooked. And we're all striving to get recognition from either our peers or our employers. And this kind of like weird circle of like burnout and turnover because of that just really puts us in a bad spot and ultimately has us people leaving the industry or had people leaving the industry for those 2 years that we were going through all of those major stressors. Misplaced and complicated systems of social support, and we have infantilization there as like our big key word. And what that truly means is everybody loves being called bar mom, right? Or bar dad. We take it as a source of pride that people trust us. We call our bar team our family. They're not your family. I hate to break it to you, even if you spend more time with them than your actual family, they are not your family. You still have family back at home. These are just people that you are working with, your teammates that you do lean on for certain things, but there should be different boxes for them. Being put in that position as being bar mom, if you're a manager, is pretty harmful and can lead to types of manipulation from your other employees. Instead of taking accountability for themselves, they'll often just work it into like, well, I didn't know any better, and like we hang out, or like, you love me, right? I've definitely gotten that, plenty of times where you get somebody comes up and bats their eyes at you because they're 10 minutes late, but they didn't call, they didn't text. These things that we are supposed to adhere to and everybody else adheres to, but one person will definitely cross those boundaries to make sure that they don't get in trouble or take the accountability for what they're doing wrong. So it's very important to remember on either side of this, whether you're a manager or you're an employee, that we are a team, we work together, and that means that we problem solve together, but it doesn't make you unaccountable for the things that you do or don't do. Labor as a liability here reinforces the am I valued or am I just a cog in the machine? A lot of the times when we're working and we're working really hard, we need the things that we aren't necessarily provided with. If you have somebody who is not as present as everyone else, we were talking earlier about like, okay, well, I'm not getting the necessary tools to actually do my job. I don't have enough bar glasses to work with. I don't have enough bottles to work with. I have to come up with either a on the fly recommendation for something because I ran out of this Amaro that goes in this drink. And now I have to send a text out and wait on my manager to tell me because they are gatekeeping this like decision bias for me. And I can't make decisions on the fly to like do my job properly. That makes us feel bad. That makes us feel like we're not as important as we should be, or we're not trusted to do our jobs. I think a little bit of trust in your employees and in your coworkers goes a really, really long way. When I first started getting into bar management, one of my mentors told me that if I can trust my employees with doing 60% of the job that I can do, then that is good enough for me. I do not expect everybody to care in the same way that I care. If you do that, you'll spend your whole life stressing over the little things. You need to be able to delegate in jobs. Delegation is such a huge key part of hospitality and honestly a big, big lifesaver when it comes to building community, because now you're giving people trust and what they do with it is up to them. And if they do the right thing, then hell yeah, kick ass. Like we love that. And you get the praise that you really honestly deserve. But trust goes a long way. Delegation will save your ass and your friends all the time. Huge fan of delegating. I will never be so wound tightly ever again when it comes to a job, because you need that time to yourself. You need to let go, and you need to be able to rest easy at work. If it's a Saturday and it's your day off, turn your phone off. You don't need to be, unless the building's on fire, you don't need to be on the horn. And then we have
good leaders delegate. Good leaders delegate. A good leader delegates.
Yeah.
That's it. Sorry.
Yeah.
We can't press that home hard enough. Like, the letting people like do their job is number one. And then we've got organizations approaching labor as a liability rather than an asset. Organizational support is the silver bullet for burnout and belongingness. Social support can be corrosive when it is asking people to conform to the workplace without regard to their individuality. I also think that like approaching labor as a liability is kind of like a big sweeping thing. A lot of times you get approached by your boss or your management, and they're like, hey, we're just going to be running really tight on the schedule, right? We're going to play it fast and loose. We normally have 4 people on the weekends, but we're going to be doing 3 people, 1 bar back instead of 4 people, 2 bar backs, because you guys like making more money, right? You like the idea of, having more money in your pocket. But what that does is stress you out even more. You don't have the extra hands that you need to get the job done. You don't have the support that you need to get the job done. The glassware's piling up, the orders are piling up. You're now, what was 2 deep is now 5 deep in your bar. And you're really gasping for air. Labor is not a liability at all, and it shouldn't be used to weaponize you and your team. As far as like what the kind of money that you're making, because realistically, if you'd had all of the help that you actually needed to work with, you would probably be able to make the same amount of money, if not more, because now you're delivering such a better service to your guests, and you're being such a better person to your teammates, because there's no anxiety, there's no stress to get things done as quickly as possible, because you've got the support that you need to be able to do your job.
This has been a really hot topic in Colorado. If anybody follows the news, there's been a state bill introduced to increase the tip credit, reduce the tip to minimum wage in some cities. In Denver is one of them. And this conversation about labor being a liability has been top of mind for me in that conversation. Catch me later if you want to hear more about it.
I would say labor is your friend, but I am not a friend of labor's. As a resident sleepy gal, I would like to get more done from home, but it's super important to think about just reworking your brain to think about labor being an asset rather than a liability. And then we're going to go to personal self-care. Identity cultivation to ensure that we don't become completely immersed in the beverage culture. That's kind of why we kind of like started off with those slides with our 5 pictures of things that we enjoy doing outside of what it is that we're known for work. Exploring those activities or interests that align with your values and passions, whether it's through art or volunteering, learning new skills, moving your body, just being present in the moment, writing a haiku, whatever comes to mind for you that lets your brain be at peace. That is super important. And it's important to ensure that we don't become completely immersed in the beverage culture, because that becomes a dangerous spot to be in. You're leaving your whole identity to be one thing, and we are all multifaceted individuals, and your personality stretches far and far away from your job at the bar. Even though that bar is very, very cool, you have depths as a human being, and we should be sharing those depths of like what it is that we enjoy. I've joined book clubs, I've joined girl dinner, I've done little things to help bring back that essence of like happiness to my soul that relates to outside of the beverage industry, and into my own personal identity.
You contain multitudes.
Multitudes, yes. Amie, I got you on establishing routines.
Yeah, so that's really talking about physical self-care. So in the breakdown of personal self-care, trying to get that physical self-care in there. And that means establishing those routines and treating your body like the majestic machine that it is. I'm, again, always trying to get people to treat themselves like they are endurance athletes because of what they're doing. So that goes in a lot of different ways. So first of all, moving your body. If you want the actual recommendation from the overlords that that are the medical overlords, we need 150 minutes of moderate intensity exercise every week. That is what
Does working a shift where you walked 25,000 steps count?
it can be to a degree, but you're not. Is that a joyful movement for you? If yes, if you love everything about your bar because you're in a very special space that gives you everything that you need, and you have, the best shoes and the best floors and the best ergonomic equipment and stuff like that, sure. But show me that unicorn and I'll move there immediately. Give yourself find ways that you can move your body that truly give your body joy. That does not have to be lifting. That does not have to be working behind the bar. That could be just walking. It could be laying on the floor and stretching and moving your body around. It could be dancing. It could be going for a hike, going for a regular walk, whatever it might be. Find a way that your body enjoys movement. Think about things that you used to enjoy when you were a kid. Even that's like playing on the playground equipment. Like, that is a beautiful way to move your body too. But find a way to move your body that gives you joy. That could be yoga. That could be so many different things. There's really no limit there. Make sure that, like, when you're going in for your shifts too, like, start your day with a 5-minute dynamic warm-up of stretches that you can do that kind of mimic what you'll do at the bar. So you have a better, like, your body is primed and ready to be on bar for that shift. And at the end of your bar shift, do 5 minutes of static stretching just to, like, elongate the muscles and kind of give it some stretch out from what you just did. Try to find those things that can be easily kind of like implemented into your daily. Giving yourself adequate nutrition and water. This is not the time for me to tell you about how to feed yourself, but pack yourself snacks. The quick and easy thing that I always recommend to people is get yourself a blender bottle, because of course there's like 20 of these in my house. Blender bottle, find a protein powder that you like, that there's a lot of them that taste really good, and then have a protein shake in your well at all times, so you can at least have a steady stream of calories while you're working, especially if you're in a space where you're not going to get those mandated breaks and have the opportunity to eat. The food discussion is another day, but you need to be feeding your body and treating your body like the machine that it is. It needs fuel. It needs more than a beer and a shot, like, after your shift. I'm sorry. That's not going to be, that doesn't work. So giving yourself proper nutrition, water. You need half of your weight in ounces in water every single day. So figure out what your body weight is, divide that in half. That in ounces is how much water you need every single day to consume, minimum. Is anybody getting enough water in here? Gotta imagine, probably not. Maybe there's a few, but water is really, really incredible. And that rest, like I talked very briefly about how your cycles, your biological clock and your circadian rhythms are a little off because we work in night work. I'm super used to it because I grew up in a family where my dad worked night shift. So I'm very used to this from a get-go. And I think that's why I've thrived in this space as much as I have. But you need to be consistent with your sleeping. If you are a person that goes in at 6 p.m. and gets off at 4 a.m. on your regular shift days, try to get as close to that as you can on your days off, even if it's just by a couple hours beforehand. Basic rule of thumb is trying not to stop eating about 14 hours after you've been awake. Let you all do the math on that later on, to give your body a proper amount of time for digestion and resetting. A lot of different little things you can do, but stop not eating. Stop acting like not eating during a 12-hour shift is a badge of honor. Stop acting like 12-hour shifts on a regular basis, if you have the ability to adjust those, as a badge of honor. They're not great for you in the long haul. As a person who is very immersed in physical health and what your body needs, it's not great. Don't do that. Establishing routines is a really important thing. I love talking about habit loops and like how you actually establish a habit. Your brain is a wily little squirrely thing that loves to compartmentalize and put things into very short segmented pieces to make it an automated process. It's very good at reserving space and time. So being able to figure out like what your cues, your routines and your rewards are is really fun. You can set habits very easily for yourself if you pay attention to those little bits. But being able to establish a routine, wake up in the morning, do a 30-second body scan, see how you're feeling from the top of your head to the tip of your toes, and listen to your body, give it what it needs, feed it, give it rest, give it water. Try to really implement those things. It's very lovely to feel nice and to feel good in your body, and also being able to like, take that into your workspace helps tremendously.
Amy, can you clarify that you said something about when you were talking about habits, about like a routine for when you should eat or versus when you stop eating? Somebody just maybe misheard what you said, if
Sure.
you remember.
The goal is to stop eating about 14 hours after you've been awake. So if you woke up at 2 p.m. in anticipation of going into work at 6 p.m., you really want to stop eating by 4 a.m. Does that make sense? Sorry,
Yeah.
I know that I didn't want to totally map it out to give too many examples of that, but like 12 to 14 hours after you've been awake is when you should stop eating to try to give your body the appropriate amount of time to digest and reset. Your gut and your brain health are deeply entwined with one another. So when we're talking about disrupted food cycles, disrupted sleeping cycles, we need to make that work to the best of our abilities. Even if we're working night shift, there's nothing wrong with working night shift. There's nothing wrong with doing what we do. You just need to make a consistent effort to keep it the same so your body can get on a schedule that works for what your working lifestyle is.
Thank you. So the last thing in our personal self-care slide is boundary setting. If you're a Gen Zer, you actually are probably better at this than the three of us millennials up here on screen who have been raised in a culture of no boundaries. But, I'm assuming that probably a lot of people on here maybe struggle with boundary setting as well. One of the best ways to feel comfortable setting boundaries in your workplace would be to start practicing boundary setting in your personal life. I wouldn't necessarily recommend, your first day on boundary setting to like just jump into work and be like, that goes beyond my boundaries. But starting in your personal life can be a great way to really figure out what are your values, like what's important to you, and then how do you stand up for those, right? So a really simple one for me is I learned a long time ago that if I don't get physical activity routinely, that I become a very unhappy person. And so something that I still struggle to do, but I'm much better at now is structuring my time, both my work time and my personal time, so that I am getting the physical exercise that I know that I need so that I can be a happy person. I think that's a really good example of boundary setting because it doesn't really have as much to do with me telling other people no. It's more setting my boundaries for myself, right? If I overschedule my calendar and I have meetings every day from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m., and I know I'm not going to get up at 7 a.m. to go work out and shower and be ready for my meetings. And I also know that I don't like going to the gym at 5:30 or 6 because that's like rush hour at the gym and everybody's there, then I'm never going to go, right? So like I know for my own personal boundary setting, if like I need to structure my work day differently, I need a break in the middle of the day, I probably need to put it on my calendar, whatever it is, so that I'm going to get my exercise in. Similarly, if you are at work, you need to know what your values are and ensure that the place that you're working at recognizes your values or shares some of your values so that the boundaries you have to set maybe aren't as extreme, right? So if it's important to you to never work a clopen because that's very hard on you physically, emotionally, mentally, maybe working at a place that like doesn't really give a shit and forces everybody to work clopens is like maybe not the right place for you. Or maybe you feel confident in setting that boundary when you get hired or when the schedule is coming out saying, hey, this is not okay for me. Like it puts me in a really bad state. You know, I need this in my life. I need X, Y, and Z. But the thing that I think is most important about setting boundaries is knowing the why so that you can explain it to whoever you're setting a boundary for. And that also goes the opposite way too of, and maybe we'll touch on this a bit more on the next slide where we talk about workplace self-care, but when we're setting standards or we're like putting something in place as, management or owners, being able to explain why is incredibly important as well, in helping everybody be on the same page or understand why decisions are made. But that goes for setting boundaries as well. Anything else to add on boundary setting, Shannon or Amie?
Just figure out your non-negotiables and stick with them and be okay sticking with them. Don't let anybody challenge you or gaslight you into thinking that your boundaries are problematic, too much, or anything like that. They're not too much. They're yours.
Yeah. All right. All right. So opposite of personal self-care is workplace self-care. And this is kind of the second part of how we take all the problems that we've presented in this presentation and find solutions or ways to start fixing them or prevent them from ever happening. So we talked about personal self-care. Now workplace self-care is just as important, right? We spend a lot of our time at work working with our teams. So making sure that we're creating cultures that take care of ourselves and take care of each other are very important. So the first one is cultivating a culture that permits self-expression. I think this is paramount in the hospitality industry. Like, as I mentioned in my picture slide with the political picture, a lot of us feel like when we start in this industry that, we are there to serve other people, and that means that we can't be ourselves. It's funny, Amie mentioned, that the hospitality industry is kind of a place for all of these like very unique people who are allowed to express themselves. But like when I first started bartending in the South, I was working in fine dining, and like tattoos were like a big taboo. Like you had to cover them, right? And so it was funny to me because I was like, I didn't really start working in this industry so that I like couldn't be myself, right? But there are still a lot of places where you can't be the expression of yourself that you want to be, and that's something that needs to change. There's no reason that I can't serve you your foie gras while like having a septum piercing and pink hair. Like the foie gras is still going to taste delicious, and I'm going to know every ingredient on the dish because I'm a professional. I'm not stupid because I have a septum piercing. So when we're cultivating places where people are allowed to have self-expression, and it acknowledges human emotions and supports or fosters supportive environments where employees feel valued, understood, and contribute to their overall job well-being and job satisfaction. So not forcing people to align, that is basically the opposite of developing psychological safety. If people feel like they're having to force themselves into a box, then they're never going to feel perfectly safe, especially psychologically safe in the environment. That's why I quit the job where I wasn't allowed to have tattoos, right? Like I didn't feel safe in that environment. So I left. Maybe that sounds kind of like a petty example, but like I couldn't be myself, and I was never going to feel like I could thrive in that environment if I had to act like a different version of myself.
All right. On this next guy, we've got embracing the abundance mindset encourages collaboration. Embracing an abundance mindset rather than a scarcity mindset within the restaurant industry encourages collaboration, innovation, and a sense of collective success, promoting a healthier and more positive work culture. What that can mean in many different ways is, allowing people to come up with creative ideas behind the bar, whether it's a pop-up idea that they might want to do, an event that they might want to bring into the bar, and allowing them to find different ways that they can utilize the workspace to make it better for themselves. I also believe that it comes to competitions or things that might be popping up like in your town, as far as like, I see it all the time where a lot of the people from my generation of bartending, people that I kind of like grew up with in this industry, they're still doing the same competitions everywhere, rather than allowing their staff or their peers go and shine and get that creative kind of energy from it, and being able to mentor them in that kind of fashion. Instead, they're jumping at the bit every single time to win that $1,000 prize, or to get that trip, or to get that everything, because they're afraid of that being leaving. They're afraid of that not being an option for them anymore, which is totally understandable. But I think as we grow in this community and grow in our workplace structures, like, we should be able to offer that to the other people who have not had that opportunity as of yet. And when you do that, you give people the confidence to be able to go and do more things just throughout their entire career. Creating systems for feedback from your staff. A lot of people do staff feedback, I think, just from both sides. A lot of the times we grew up in a culture where we were only being notated and audited from our employers, and now being able to have those audits come from staff really help us as managers to be able to find out what we're not doing so well and how we can make things better. How many times do we hear, how can I make this right? Or how can I make this better? And then you see not a single change at all, because they're not actually wanting your ideas. They just want you to think that your opinion matters. Actually showing up for your staff in this way can change a lot of the tension that might possibly be lying behind your bar. Thinking about training programs that enhance the workplace, but beyond spirits training, much like the Tona Society, having those be available to your staff or your teammates, being able to share different links that you see pop up rather than keeping them to yourselves, allows for everybody at the table to get sat. I like to think of my table not being a circle, but rather a horseshoe, where I'm able to add more people all of the time, and nobody feels like they're being cornered out or being left out. That's how the industry should work to me. I think that being an open space for people to come to can change the dynamic of many negative aspects of the community. And creating workplaces that encourage employees to develop and build relationships beyond the confines of the establishment through team building activities, community engagement, or networking opportunities. Those things can strengthen bonds and enhance morale at the same time. And it will also reduce feelings of isolation or burnout. I know a lot of companies that we belong to normally do like one staff party a year. And that's great and all, but like if you're only doing it once, sometimes people will just rather take that day off. So I encourage you to try to think of more ways that you can get your staff engaged, whether it's on your own time or on the company's time. Open availability to everyone, because you may never know who else is working next to you that wants to learn about that certain spirit, or maybe wants to join you on that volunteer excursion to help other people. Being able to have these opportunities open can really, really just help people feel better about where they're working. And by prioritizing a holistic approach to employee well-being and fostering a sense of belonging and camaraderie, restaurants and workplaces can cultivate a supportive and vibrant culture that not only retains talent, but also promotes long-term success and sustainability. The people that I've seen who have steadfast relationships with the programs that they work for are not always because they work at the like Michelin star restaurant or, places that are awarded. It's the places where their employer make them feel like a human being and that they have worth and value in ways that outweigh them just being at work. So just things to keep in mind, especially when we're talking about boundaries too, being able to accept or not accept the places that you're working at. Know when those red flags are popping up. Red flags can be fun at times, but most of the time when we're talking about them in a workspace, we should be identifying those as things that we don't want to be considered for or be associated with. and get yourself out of there. Know your rights, know what those things mean to you and how important they are, and then also let other people know those things about you too.
One of the big red flags that I have that I'm always looking for, that is like a scratched record, is when I hear bar leaders or people in our spaces say I versus we, because there is not anything that you did solo. I'm sorry. But when people are like, I did this, I did that, I was like, no way in hell. We did something. Your team did something. That always stands out to me. It is so loud. And on that note, more help for like the leaders in this space is talking about implementing proactive versus reactive workplace standards. So when you're building out your SOPs, they go way beyond like P&Ls, costing docs, and what your poor cost is and what you're striving for in terms of those things. Think about putting together how you're going to like handle different situations as they come up. Number one, like not even a situation. How are you going to handle taking care of your staff? How are you going to compensate them, care for them, provide them pathways for growth and development? More than just expansive spirit, spear, and wine training, which is super important. So is also, please get them training on non-alcoholics and how to actually create a very good non-alcoholic cocktail, which again, you've got many experts in this room that can help out with all those things. Establish rules that show you care about your staff by showing, creating house rules. How are you expecting guests to behave in your space? You get to set the tone for how people are going to come into your space. So just like how Shannon pointed out, the guest is always right in matters of taste. If you want to go the full quote, or if you want to go back to the half-ass quote, the guest might always be right, but you get to determine who the guest is that comes into your space. Being able to set that tone for your staff, for your workplace environment ahead of it happening, rather than having to band-aid something after it happens, really is one of the best ways to create a safe, respectful, and welcoming environment for the people that you're employing and for your guests that are coming in there as well. You also have an opportunity to empower your staff with training on, bystander intervention and de-escalation, being able to help guide them on those tricky situations. The best people in hospitality are those that have those strong soft skills. The hard skills, the technical stuff is very useful in spaces, but soft skills are what shine in hospitality. Those are the people that are able to create extremely quick rapport with any person that walks off the street. They are the people that are able to problem solve on the fly when things come up. They are the ones who remain calm under duress. So being able to help really facilitate and fuel those soft skills to become stronger and stronger is how you can create that great space for not only like the health of the business and the health of your employees is what will fuel from there. And I know there was like you were talking about a feedback system beforehand as well. In addition to that, think about putting in an anonymous reporting system so people feel like there are multiple ways in which they know how to be able to report when they're observing anything that's happening in the bar, whether it's like poor money practices, things going on back of house, things going on front of house, things going on with guests, things going on with coworkers, whatever it is, give them the space and the safety to be able to report freely, and then take and honor those concerns that come through seriously. Like the way you show your people that you value them is by putting those things in place ahead of time, rather than being reactionary and having to deal with something after it's already happened. Because it's not too late then, but there's so much more broken trust and so much more time and repair that has to happen after that. So really putting those things in place for your business and your team, prioritizing the people over the profits, is how you can help create that workplace self-care. And if you're an employee, look for those spaces that do that already. Don't deal with the crap that you see on a regular basis. Like if it's there and it's happening, any of us will help you find a different job anywhere. Literally, please call us. There.
All right. So this last slide, I promise we're wrapping it up as well. I know that we're long. We're a bunch of yappy ladies. This last slide I think is really important, and it's to ask yourself the question of, can it change? If you are an employee, can the workplace change? Do the managers want to change? Do they have the capacity to change? Similar to if you're a manager and owner, are they coachable? Are my employees coachable? Do they want to change? Boundary setting is very important, but boundary setting without providing any feedback can often be a disservice to the people who maybe need to hear feedback or need to change. So when we're working in a place that is maybe not functioning well, not taking care of its employees well, whatever it may be, the first question is asking yourself if the workplace can change. It's also important to ask yourself, do I have the capacity to help them, change? And then it's okay if the answer to that question is no. But remember when you are leaving a place, that the greatest disservice you can do to all of their other employees or their future employees is to not provide that feedback. Similar to obviously Yelp sucks for the most part, but there are times when a restaurant does need to receive feedback. We can argue whether or not that Yelp is the best avenue in which they receive that feedback. But, if you go somewhere and you get a burger that's basically raw, you not telling anybody about that is doing the restaurant a disservice. Similar when you're working in an establishment, if you're not providing them that feedback, they're never going to change. And then therefore, the majority of the industry is never going to change if we don't start implementing some feedback and trying to help people get to where we want them to be. Like I said, it doesn't necessarily mean that we need to shoulder the burden of changing the entire industry. But if you're in a place that you believe does have the capacity to change, they just need some feedback and some guidance getting there, then ask yourself if you have the capacity to help them get there. Remember that your perception is your reality. So if you are feeling a way, then it is true to you. That is one of the hardest lessons I ever learned as a manager, is that somebody's perception is their reality. And then lastly, if you are feeling unheard in your workplace, but you do want to ensure that what you have to say is heard, find an ally that can help advocate for you. This is similar to why a lot of people in marginalized backgrounds feel like they are always hitting barriers in their workplace, because they are not being heard, and perhaps they are not finding or having people on their staff or on their team that can be allies for them and help advocate for them. All right. So really quick, last thing we wanted to share, there are a lot of other amazing organizations in the industry that are doing the work as well. So here are some of those resources. Chow is based here in Colorado. They do virtual meetings every single day that are, they're not like AA meetings or anything like that. They are simply meetings where you can come talk about what you're experiencing in the workplace. It's not with any other goal other than to just be a place where people can talk about what they're experiencing. They also offer a variety of really great trainings as well. Ben's Friends is a sober network for the hospitality industry that has daily meetings that are virtual, and they do have in-person meetings in some cities as well. That's for anybody who is sober or who's exploring sobriety in the industry. Another Round, Another Rally is a nonprofit organization that does offer emergency financial assistance to people in the industry for specific things they're experiencing. One of the ones that I think is particularly amazing is they have a fund for people who are experiencing sexual harassment and discrimination in the workplace. If you're in an unsafe work experience and you need to leave immediately, they do have a fund to help you with that. And then they also offer a lot of really cool mentorship opportunities as well. And then Southern Smoke Foundation, they also have an emergency assistance fund, which is the main part of their nonprofit organization. But they have since expanded, and they now offer either affordable or pro bono mental health resources to people that live in specific states. And you'll have to go online to look at what those states are. But I believe it's Texas, Washington, D.C., maybe California, but don't quote me on that. Please go look online. And I'm sure they're trying to expand, but there's all these things that go into that. We would love to take any questions that people have. I know that we have a couple that have been pinned.
Yes.
Go ahead, Jen.
No, sorry. I was gonna ping those back to you if you're ready to take a couple.
Yeah.
The first was just a little more clarification, Amie, on what you were talking about with the eating schedule. Nigel asked, so just to clarify, to stop eating 2 hours before bed, then assuming you get 8 hours.
I saw Nigel's comment, but I still would recommend go with the 14 hours after you've been awake, because some people don't have the same sleep-wake cycle as everybody else. Some people thrive on 6 hours of sleep. Some need 10. So I wouldn't want to do it by that. I would say 14 hours, 12 to 14 hours after you wake up. Stop eating.
Awesome. Thank you. And there were a bunch of great resources there at the end. But Eric Lopez did ask, mention that most bartenders are part-time and don't have access to basic medical care. Do you all have any recommendations on resources that are available for those?
Medical care in particular, is tough. If you're talking about physical medical care, I think it would be really dependent on where you live. I do know that a lot of hospitals are nonprofit organizations. So if you need medical care, you can go get medical care at a nonprofit hospital without the expectation of having to pay per se, but it's very nuanced, and it really depends on where you live and what the organization is. So you would really just need to look into that. Unfortunately, nobody has been able to figure out any kind of large scale organizational health care system for the industry. I know that people have tried. I know that people are still trying. So yeah, I would say it is very dependent on where you live. Mental health resources, naked cat. Mental health resources are a little different, but then once again, it is still pretty reliant on what state you live in, because of just the barriers that nonprofit organizations have to getting into specific states. There's a lot that has to go into that. Another nonprofit mental health care resource that I love is Chesed Wellness, Khesed. They offer very affordable and oftentimes pro bono therapy, but it is for specific states, similar to Southern Smoke.
Yeah, for reproductive health, everybody can go to, if you have a Planned Parenthood in your state, you can go to them and you can get sliding scale assistance, a lot of times zero cost assistance, no matter your however you identify, you will be able to get that. You just need to show your work, essentially keep your stubs and things like that. Maybe, and if Medicaid doesn't get dissolved, you might still have access to that, but that's with the assumption that you're saying part-time and would qualify underneath those limits too.
Great, thank you. It looks like we don't have any other questions pinned. Is there anything else from our presenters today? Do we feel good?
No, I should have put a contact slide in there, but we'll make sure that any email that goes out from Lush Life has our email addresses in it. If anybody would like to connect with us later, if you enjoyed this presentation and you would like to see it done where you live or where you work, we do offer it. So reach out if you have any questions about it.
Well, thank you all so much. This is all very relatable. I don't know about the audience, but I definitely went and got a glass of water when I heard the suggestion of half my body weight. So thank you for that. Amie, Alex, Shannon, this is incredible. Thank you, Altos Tequila. If you enjoyed the class, please hit the like or love button and let us know what you think in the comments. And if you want to see more Portland Cocktail Week classes like this one, follow Portland Cocktail Week on Facebook. That's facebook.com/PDXCW, or on YouTube at youtube.com/PDXCW. We're also at PDXCW and at Lush Life Productions on Instagram. You can find out what's coming up next there. And you can find out more about the Tahona Society at Tahona Society. And you can find the Tahona Society competition submission form at pdxcwtahonasociety.com/competition, or through the Tahona Society app, which you can sign up for at tahonasociety.com. You can find Amie at The Health Tender. Alex is at AXL Jump. And Shannon is at ShannonTheCity_ on Instagram. I'm at Mescal Finds Jen. DM us if you want to keep the conversation going. Tune in next Monday, March 17th, when Julie Reiner and Susan Federoff bring us partnership pitfalls and investment scenarios, where we'll be chatting budgets, fundraising, as well as partnership and shareholder agreements. Thank you all so much and have a great week.
Thank you.